Thanksgiving at the Peterson house had always been loud to many voices into smallest space, to many opinions squeezed between dishes of mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. But this year, the tension felt different. The smiles were tighter, the hugs shorter, and every word seemed dipped in something sharp. I took my usual seat near the end of the table, partly because it was the only empty spot left, partly because it gave me room to breathe. My sister, Lily, sat across from me, already holding court like she was hosting some royal banquet instead of our yearly family dinner. She wore a dramatic burgundy dress, the kind that sparkled under the chandelier every time she moved. She wanted to be looked at, admired, envied. She always had. Everything looks wonderful, Mom, she said sweetly, tapping her wine glass. You've outdone yourself this year. Again, Mom beamed. Thank you, sweetheart. I quietly reached for the bread basket, and before my hand even touched it, Lily's voice cut through the air. Careful with that, okay? Mom worked hard. I froze, fingers hovering. It was a small thing, but she had a way of making even the smallest things feel like accusations. I forced a smile and pulled the basket toward me anyway. The conversation drifted to weather, work, and Aunt Sharon's third divorce. I tried to blend into the background, but I could feel Lily's eyes flicking to me now and then, calculating, waiting. When dinner plates had been clear and everyone was leaning back with full stomachs, Lily slowly stood up. Her glass of wine caught the chandelier's glow as she lifted it slightly. I have an announcement, she said, loud enough to pull every pair of eyes toward her. Mom and Dad exchanged a quick nervous glance, one I didn't catch until later. Lily smiled, white and triumphant, the kind of smile she used when she was about to win something. After discussing things with Mom and Dad, we've made a very important family decision. My stomach tightened. She took a breath, savoring the moment. Mom and Dad are signing the house over to me. The room went dead still. Forks stopped in midair. Chairs shifted. Someone at the far end whispered, "Oh." I felt the bottom drop out of my chest. Lily continued, almost gleefully. Since I'm the one who's been helping with everything lately, the bills, the errands, the doctor visits, it just makes the most sense. She shrugged like it was obvious, natural, and we wanted to let everyone know now. So there are no expectations. Her eyes locked onto mine. You get nothing. The words weren't cruel by accident. They were crafted, delivered, polished like a weapon. My breath caught, and for a moment I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't even swallow. I glanced at my parents, hoping for some kind of denial, a laugh, a no, honey, that's not what we meant. But they only nodded, small, tight nods that felt like blades. Mom's voice wobbled. We just thought it was the best choice. Best choice? I repeated, barely able to hear my own voice over the ringing in my ears. Dad cleared his throat. Lily lives closer. She's involved. You're busy with work. It's practical. Practical. The words sliced deeper than any insult Lily had ever thrown my way. My cheeks burned. Every relative at the table was staring at me, some sympathetic, some awkward, some clearly enjoying the drama. My humiliation felt absolute, public, complete. I didn't know this was a competition, I said softly, trying to hold myself together. Lily smiled again, slow and smug. Well, someone has to be responsible. It's not personal, but it was. It always had been. The room remained painfully silent. My heart thudded against my ribs, and for a moment I wanted to run, to scream, to throw my napkin in her perfect, powdered face. But instead, I forced my hands to stay steady in my lap. Well, I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts. Thank you for letting me know. Lily sat back down gracefully, satisfied. Mom avoided my eyes. Dad picked up his water as if the conversation had been about the weather and me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stared at my empty plate. Thanksgiving had never tasted so bitter. The cold November air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside, pulling the front door shut behind me before anyone could call my name. Not that they would. The sounds of laughter and clinking dishes filtered through the windows, muffled, as though the family had already moved on from the bomb that had just detonated at the table. I walked down the driveway slowly, my legs shaky, my chest tight. It wasn't just the humiliation that burned inside me, it was everything it represented, everything it confirmed. I had always been the forgotten child. The memories flooded back with cruel clarity. One after another. I was 8 when I realized Lily got special treatment. She cried once about wanting the newest pink bike with a sparkly basket. Dad bought it the next day. When I asked if I could get one too, Mom said gently, "Sweetheart, money's tight. Maybe next year." Next year never came. At 12, Lily threw a tantrum because she didn't want to eat leftovers. Mom made her a fresh meal, while I microwaved mine quietly. I had asked why Lily didn't have to finish her plate, and Mom snapped, "Don't start. You know your sister is sensitive." When I was 15, I got my first job bagging groceries after school. Lily got a car for her 16th birthday, bright blue, wrapped in a giant bow like something out of a movie. I saved for 2 years to afford a used sedan with a dented bumper. Nobody took a picture of me standing next to mine. Funny how that hurt more than I expected. By 17, I was helping pay the electric bill, not because anyone asked, but because someone had to, and Lily certainly wasn't doing it. She was too busy going on trips with friends. Trips that magically got funded even when Mom insisted we were cutting back. I remember coming home one night from a late shift, exhausted and smelling like fried food, only to hear the family laughing in the living room. When I peeked in, Lily was showing off a designer purse. We wanted to reward her. Dad had said, "She's been trying so hard at school." I had straight A's that semester. Nobody said a word about it. And now, tonight, Thanksgiving, the pattern had finally revealed its ugliest truth. After a lifetime of being the backup daughter, the placeholder child, the responsible one they relied on, but never recognized, they had chosen her again, chosen her over me, chosen her instead of me. The wind stung my cheeks as I reached the sidewalk. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there, not for another minute. Not after Lily's smug face, not after my parents' quiet nods. My voice shook just thinking about it. "You get nothing?" Those 3 words clanged inside my head like metal. I stopped under a street lamp, wrapping my arms round myself. The truth was painful, unmistakable. I had spent my whole life trying to earn something that was never going to be given to me. Not love, not fairness, not even acknowledgement. Inside the house, the laughter rose again. They weren't thinking about me. They weren't wondering if I was okay. They weren't even noticing I'd left. Just like always, a car passed slowly, its headlights sweeping over me. I stepped farther onto the sidewalk, wiping the wetness from my face before the cold could freeze it. I thought about walking back, pretending none of it mattered. I thought about swallowing the hurt the way I'd been doing since childhood. But something inside me snapped it then. Freeing thread finally breaking. No more being the forgotten one. No more begging for their attention. No more pretending that the scraps they offered were enough. I took a deep breath, lifted my chin, and walked away from the house, not just for the night, but from the role they had written for me since birth. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. I told myself I was done with that house, done with the people inside it, done with the role they'd trapped me in for decades. But life has a cruel sense of humor. And a week later, I found myself driving back down that familiar street, the trees arching overhead like they were trying to warn me. I wasn't going there to reconcile or confront anyone. I just needed to pick up a dusty old box of childhood things I'd left in my old closet. Nothing emotional, nothing meaningful, just closure. I told myself. Mom had sounded distracted when I called. She told me she'd leave the door unlocked because she was heading out. Typical. Even logistics came with a side of indifference. When I stepped inside, the house smelled the same: cinnamon candles, laundry detergent, and something else I could never quite identify. Something that always reminded me of being small and unseen. The lights were on, which told me Mom either forgot she was saving electricity or didn't care enough to turn them off. I walked toward my old room, the floorboards creaking under my shoes. Halfway down the hall, I paused. Voices, soft, hurried once drifting from the kitchen. I recognized Dad's low rumble and Lily's high, slightly dramatic tone. So much for the house being empty. I took a step back, intending to leave and come back later. But then something tugged at me. A rustling sound, the unmistakable shuffle of paper. I didn't want to eavesdrop. I really didn't. But as soon as their voices faded, curiosity pulled me toward the dining room like a magnet. That's when I saw them, stacks of papers spread across the table, neat, official, heavy with importance. And on top, in bold letters, the words, property transfer deed. My stomach twisted. This was it. The contract that made the Thanksgiving announcement real. The one I wasn't supposed to see. The one that finalized the fact that the house, the place I'd helped keep standing during late-night emergencies and overdue bills, was being gifted to Lily like a prize. I should have walked away. I should have grabbed my box and left. But something on the page caught my eye, something that reached out and gripped me. A name. My name. Not on the beneficiary line. Of course not. My name was listed under a different section entirely. Previous financial contributor. My breath caught. My hands froze above the papers. Previous contributor? Suddenly, a memory pushed its way into my mind, clear and sharp. I was 21, working 2 jobs, drowning in exhaustion when Mom had called me crying. The furnace had broken in the middle of winter. They didn't have enough money for the repair, and the bank had tightened loan approvals. They needed help just this once. I had given them nearly everything I had saved. I remember Dad joking, "We'll pay you back someday," and Mom thanking me like she was embarrassed. I didn't ask for anything in return. I was just trying to keep my family warm. But apparently legally it had mattered. My pulse hammered in my ears. The contract didn't just mention my contribution, it recorded it, acknowledged it, validated it. It listed the exact amount I gave, right there in black and white, and spelled out something else. Something far more significant. Major contributors must sign off on ownership transfers involving the primary residence, meaning they needed my approval. Meaning, without my signature, the deal was incomplete, meaning they had tried to cut me out of something I had helped build. Heat spread through my chest, anger, disbelief, vindication, all colliding into one overwhelming surge. My entire life, they had acted like my efforts didn't matter. Like I was simply supposed to serve, support, and disappear. And now the truth sat on the table like a sleeping snake, ready to strike the moment it was disturbed. I carefully placed the papers back exactly as I found them, my hands trembling. Everything inside me felt different, stronger, sharper. The forgotten child had stumbled onto a truth she wasn't supposed to know, one that flipped the script, one that shifted the ground beneath all of us. Footsteps sounded down the hall, Lily's voice, cheerful and oblivious. I grabbed my childhood box and slipped out the back door before they noticed I'd been there. As I reached my car, clutching the box to my chest, a thought settled over me like a second heartbeat. They thought I had nothing, but I held the one thing they needed. And this time, I wasn't giving it away. I don't know what triggered the memory, maybe seeing my name on that deed, maybe the cold bite of betrayal still lingering from Thanksgiving. But suddenly, as I sat in my car gripping the old cardboard box, I was pulled backward in time, not gently, more like being yanked underwater by a riptide you never saw coming. To happen years ago, long before Lily learned how to weaponize entitlement. Before I understood what favoritism could really cost someone. I was 21, juggling 2 part-time jobs, finishing community college, and living mostly off instant noodles and determination. Money was tight, but I was used to being stretched thin. I'd been stretched thin my whole life. One evening, while I was wiping down tables at the cafe, my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. She rarely called unless she needed something. But something in my stomach twisted. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked up. Her voice was shaking. She said they were coming to take the house. I remember standing there in the back hallway, the smell of burnt coffee and disinfectant swirling round me, as she explained between shaky breaths that they were behind on the mortgage. Dad's hours at work had been cut again. The savings were gone, and the bank had sent a final notice. They had 3 weeks to pay or lose everything. I felt my chest tighten. The house wasn't perfect, but it was the only constant we'd ever had. The walls were worn, the wallpaper peeling, but it held every birthday, every Christmas, every fight, every reconciliation. It held us. When I asked why she hadn't told me sooner, she said she didn't want to worry me, as if the entire family home collapsing wasn't something I should know. I told her I'd come by that night. I still remember walking into the living room. The lights were dim, and Dad sat at the dining table staring at a stack of bills like they were written in another language. His hands were trembling, the way they only did when he felt completely powerless. Mom's eyes were red and swollen. "Sit," Dad said, but his voice cracked, and in that moment, he didn't look like the man who'd lectured me about responsibility. He looked small, scared, human. They explained everything, every overdue payment, every late fee, every call from the bank. They tried to justify it, tried to make it sound like it wasn't their fault. But beneath the excuses was pure desperation. They didn't ask me outright. They didn't have to. I went home, logged into my tiny savings account, and stared at the amount I'd been collecting for years: babysitting money, leftover scholarship funds, my tax return, tips from the cafe, bits of adulthood I had carefully pieced together. It wasn't huge, but it was something, enough to stall disaster. Enough to save them. I withdrew almost all of it. The next day, I handed Dad the check. I'll never forget the way he looked at it, like it was both a blessing and a burden. His eyes glassed over, and he whispered, "We'll pay you back someday." Mom pulled me into a tight hug and cried against my shoulder. I rubbed her back, telling her it was okay, telling her family sticks together. But even then, part of me wondered if they would have done the same for me. We never talked about it again. They never paid me back. I never asked. I thought helping them was simply what a daughter should do. I thought being needed meant being loved. I thought this sacrifice would finally earn me a place in their hearts, not a special one, not more than Lily, but at least equal. But standing outside the house years later, with the November air cold against my skin and the truth echoing in my mind, I realized something painful. They hadn't forgotten my contribution. They had hidden it. They had buried the one moment I held power. And now they needed that power again. Only this time, I wasn't the scared 21-year-old desperate for approval. I was the woman they thought they could erase. Lily didn't waste a single day before turning the house announcement into her personal parade. It started with a smug little photo on Facebook, her standing in front of the porch with our parents on either side, all of them grinning like they'd just won a lottery instead of stolen a legacy. The caption was what really stung. Officially the heir, excited for this new chapter, no mention of me, not even a polite. Family decisions are complicated. Nothing. Just her victory lap. Only escalated from there. She posted a video tour of her future home, walking through rooms that held pieces of my childhood like they were her new trophies. She even opened the linen closet and joked, "Mom says I can finally redecorate all this old stuff. My blankets were still in there. My childhood quilt." She laughed like my history was clutter. Relatives started messaging me with awkward sympathy. Those uncomfortable little bubble-wrapped comments like, "At least you're independent, and don't feel bad. Some people aren't meant to inherit property." I wanted to scream. I hadn't said a word to anyone, yet somehow I had become the pitiful one. Then came the group chat, our extended family's usual chaos, where Lily dropped the final blow. She wrote, "I'm glad Mom and Dad chose me. Honestly, being the responsible child pays off. Some of us don't need to be financially carried." My phone buzzed nonstop with reactions. Laughing emojis, heart emojis, even a few congratulations. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I had paid bills in that house. I had worked double shifts so the lights would stay on. I had saved the roof over their heads. Responsible child. She didn't even pay for her own car insurance until she was 20-6. Later that night, she called me. Her voice was sugar with a sharp edge. She said, "You should be grateful you don't have responsibilities like I do now. Owning a house isn't easy, you know. Some people just aren't cut out for big things." I didn't even respond. I just let the silence hang until she awkwardly left and hung up. But humiliation has a strange way of shifting shape. At first it suffocates you, trapping you under its weight. But then it hardens, sharpens, turns into fuel. That's what happened to me. I opened my laptop. I typed property transfer laws, adult children, and stared as the search results filled the screen. Then I added contributions, rights, co-owner without title, equitable interest, page after page, article after article, case after case. My pulse picked up with every answer I found. My contribution years ago wasn't invisible. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't empty-handed. The law didn't care about favoritism. It cared about facts, proof, documentation. And I had documentation. Buried deep in an old folder on my external hard drive, I had saved the deposit slip from the bank. I had the withdrawal record. I had the email confirmation from the mortgage advisor. Forgotten artifacts of a moment I once wished they would remember. Now I was grateful they didn't, because their silence meant they thought I was out of the game. But I wasn't. Not anymore. Lily could gloat, post, brag, and preen all she wanted. She could build her throne from every smug comment and every filtered picture. But the foundation she stood on wasn't as solid as she thought. I had something she didn't. A stake in the house she believed she already owned. The law office wasn't anything like I'd imagined. No marble floors. No intimidating silence, just a modest suite on the third floor of an old brick building downtown. The receptionist looked half asleep, and the carpet smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. But the moment I stepped inside, something in me shifted. Maybe it was the weight of the folder in my arms, thick with documents I'd never expected to use. Maybe it was the quiet. Or maybe it was the simple fact that, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was walking towards something instead of away from it. The attorney, Mr. Harland, was a middle-aged man with silver-rimmed glasses and a calm, measured voice. He introduced himself, shook my hand, and motioned for me to sit. I did, clutching the folder like a life raft. "So," he said, "tell me what brings you in." I told him everything. Not the emotional details, not the years of favoritism, not the Thanksgiving ambush, not the humiliation from Lily's victory parade. Just the facts, the financial crisis, the money I gave, the documents I found on the dining table, my name on the older paperwork, the recent property transfer. He listened without interrupting, his brow furrowing slowly as I talked. When I finished, he said, "Let me see the documents." I handed him the folder. He spread everything across his desk. The deposit slip with my signature still sharp and young-looking. The bank withdrawal notice showing nearly everything I had saved at 21. The email confirmation from the mortgage specialist thanking me for my contribution toward resolving the delinquency, and the photocopied deed from last week with Lily's name typed neatly under transferee. For a few minutes, the only sound in the room was the soft flipping of paper. Then he looked up. And his expression had changed entirely. "Ms. Harper," he said, sitting back in his chair, "I'm going to be very honest with you. What you have here is in small. This isn't a sentimental contribution. This is legally significant." I swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said slowly, tapping the documents with a deliberate finger, "you're not just entitled to something, you may actually own the biggest claim on the property." I stared at him, my heart thudding in my ears, unsure if I'd heard correctly. "I don't understand." "They transferred the house to my sister." "It's already done." "They transferred the title." He corrected gently. "But title ain't the only thing that determines ownership. Equity matters. Contribution matters. Intent matters." He lifted the old email and held it up. "This alone is huge. The bank recognized you as a financial contributor. And when a child helps save a property from foreclosure, especially with proof of funds coming directly from their own account, that child is often considered to have an equitable interest. I never asked for anything back, I whispered. That doesn't erase what you put in, he said. And honestly, it makes your position stronger. You weren't repaid. There was no written agreement releasing your interest. Your parents accepted your money to save the home, and now they've transferred the home without acknowledging your stake. That can be challenged. Double quotes challenged. The word felt electric, dangerous, powerful. But they didn't tell me anything, I said. They acted like none of this ever happened. He sighed softly. People often minimize help when it's inconvenient to remember, but the law doesn't forget the way families do. I felt something tighten, then loosen, deep in my chest. A shift small, unmistakable. They tried to erase me, I said quietly. The words tasted bitter. Harlan nodded. It appears so. But they didn't erase the paper trail. And paper trails speak louder than memory. He straightened the documents and slid them back toward me. If you want to pursue this, you have a strong case. Very strong. I stared at the stack of papers, the fragments of a history my parents had buried. The proof of a daughter they never truly saw. The evidence of the only time they ever needed me. For years, I'd believed that moment was invisible, that my sacrifice had dissolved in their silence. But now, in this small office, with its lemon-scented carpet and soft fluorescent lights, I realized something that sent a slow, burning tremor through my entire body. I had never been powerless. They just counted on me believing I was. Okay, I said, my voice steady. Tell me what to do next. I spent the next few days in a kind of intense, focused silence. The kind that feels like everyone else's noise has been muted, while Lily was busy posting selfies in the driveway and bragging to cousins about her new home. I was quietly building my arsenal. My parents had underestimated me for decades, assuming I would take my humiliation and disappear like I always had. They were about to learn that invisibility cuts both ways. I started by gathering every shred of proof I could find: bank statements, deposit slips, emails, text messages, even the faded receipts I had stuffed into an old folder years ago. Each document I unearthed felt like a small victory, a reminder that my efforts had never truly gone unnoticed, at least not by the law. I made copies, double-checked every number, and organized everything chronologically. By the time I was done, the folder felt heavier, not from paper, but from the weight of the truth it carried. Next, I contacted Mr. Harlan again. We discussed placing a legal hold on the estate transfer, a precaution to prevent Lily from claiming the house outright while my claim was being reviewed. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone who wasn't paying attention, but it gave me leverage. For the first time in years, I felt the kind of quiet control I had always craved. The power was intoxicating, but I couldn't let it spill too soon. Timing mattered. I also drafted a formal claim of contribution. I wrote carefully, making sure every word was factual, unemotional, and irrefutable. I referenced the mortgage payments I had made, the emergency funds I had provided, and the lack of repayment. Every statement reinforced a simple truth: my contribution was real, substantial, and legally binding. This wasn't about revenge, yet it was about claiming what was rightfully mine. But even as I typed, I could feel the energy shift inside me. Something dormant had awakened. Emotionally, I began to detach. The humiliation, the sneers, the whispers, they still stung. But they no longer define me. Every Instagram post Lily uploaded, every proud comment, became fuel rather than poison. I no longer needed acknowledgement from them to validate my worth. I had discovered a new source of power, one that didn't require anyone's approval or gratitude. That realization was terrifying and liberating all at once. I caught myself smiling quietly when I thought about the first time Lily would realize she wasn't untouchable. The idea wasn't malicious, yet it was simply clarity. They had all assumed I would stay silent, take the loss, and vanish. Instead, I was preparing for a shift that would leave them scrambling to understand how I had regained control, and I hadn't even told them a word. By the end of the week, my plan was precise. I knew the steps to legally assert my contribution. I knew how to block any immediate attempts to finalize the transfer. And most importantly, I knew that I didn't need to confront anyone just yet. Power, I realized, was more effective when it was patient. It could simmer, unseen, until the moment it struck was perfect. As I placed the organized folder neatly in my backpack and shut my laptop, I felt a sense of calm determination I hadn't experienced before. The scared, overlooked daughter had disappeared somewhere between the bank statements and legal filings. In her place stood someone steady, strategic, and aware of her own worth. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, I allowed myself one thought. They had treated me like nothing, like I would vanish without a fight. They didn't know that the quietest person at the table often has the loudest weapon, and I was ready to use mine. It started with the phone calls. At first, it was just Dad, his voice shaking with disbelief. What is this? He stammered. You can't just, this isn't how families handle things. I let it ring through voicemail. I didn't answer. Then Mom, her tone was equal parts pleading and accusation. You're tearing us apart. Don't you care about the family? She cried. I felt a familiar tug in my chest, the one I had always allowed to pull me back into guilt, but I silenced it. For the first time, I realized guilt wasn't mine to carry. By the third day, the calls were nonstop. They tried every tactic, reasoning, begging, blaming, guilt-tripping, and with every ring, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and calm. The power I had quietly built was real, and now it was visible to them. Then Lily arrived. She banged on my apartment door like a storm, her voice cracking as she shouted, "You're ruining my life. How could you do this to me? Mom and Dad trusted you to be normal." I opened the door slowly, letting her storm in. Her eyes were wild, tears streaking her face, mascara smudged from the intensity of her outrage. She wanted to corner me, to scream, to dominate the space with her anger the way she had always dominated the family. But I didn't flinch. I looked at her calmly. I didn't do this, I said quietly, letting the words land like stones. You did. You and Mom and Dad. This isn't me taking anything from you, it's you revealing who you really are. She froze, confusion breaking through the fury for a moment. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I don't understand. You're being unfair.